Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Is there any way that selling is similar to martial arts? The moves, the countermoves, strategies, and tactics? It's an interesting idea and one that has been played out by our guests. But you'll have to determine if it's a meaningful analogy and one that will help you sell more effectively. So put on your workout clothes and slip in those headphones as Scott and I welcome Elliot Bayev and Daniel Moskowitz, authors of Sales Jiu-Jitsu, to episode 486 of the Winning at Selling podcast. Elliot Bayev and Daniel Moskowitz take a combined 50 years experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and building 8-figure sales teams and bottle it up inside a powerful new international best-selling book, Sales Jiu-Jitsu, the Secret Black Belt System for Champion Leaders. Elliot is a second-degree black belt and has more than 30 years of martial arts experience, with 25 in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Daniel has been in sales for 25 years and currently serves as the director of sales at Advance Your Reach, which he helped grow into an 8-figure privately held company. Daniel and Elliot, welcome to the Winning at Selling podcast.
Thanks so much for having us.
It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, welcome.
So writing a book, that's a challenging prospect. I've thought about that. I know Scott's put one together. What prompted you to do it?
Well, it was interesting. I had just lost 100 pounds, and I'm on Facebook, as one would sometimes find themselves on. And I had, in that process of losing the weight, I had to go to my neurologist because I was bumbling around. I couldn't type. I hit my head on the counter. I had no coordination. He's like, "Oh, well, you lost it in 7 months. And it's too quick, and you lost the brain body map thing." And he's like, "Go pick up a martial art." And you know what? I'm not like a violent person. Like, to the idea of like hitting somebody didn't really appeal to me. And I saw this ad on Facebook that a buddy of ours, mutual connection between Elliot and I, was starting up this mastermind for entrepreneurs to mastermind their businesses and learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm like, I have no idea what this Jiu-Jitsu thing's all about. So I looked it up. I'm like, wow, it's not hitting. It's like grappling. I did a little bit of wrestling in high school, and I was like,
right.
Wow, this like really appealed to me. And I went out and tried it out.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So as Daniel mentioned, I run a program called Mastermind BJJ, bringing entrepreneurs together on the mats to actually learn some of the principles and philosophies behind jiu-jitsu, train together, and then go and mastermind, talk about life and business. And at one of these brunches, or basically from the first time Daniel stepped on the mats, as I would teach a technique or a philosophy, you just see his eyes light up. And after this happening enough, I just asked him at one of these brunches, what was it that spoke to you? And as he would explain how he taught sales, it was just so clear that there was such an amazing overlap between the way I taught jiu-jitsu and the way he trained his teams. And as this kept happening, someone at the table was just eventually said, "Okay, guys, enough. Just write a book already." And
right.
2 years later, here we are.
So it's kind of an interesting combo, one that in sales we probably haven't heard of a lot. Have you gotten some pushback on it? Have you had to explain it to people? Tell us how that's gone.
Yeah, I think, what really separates the concepts, and what aligns is the idea of like winning without hurting someone. And that's a core philosophical element of like what I have in sales and what jiu-jitsu is naturally. And so I'll speak from the sales side, and then Elliot can speak from the jiu-jitsu side. So from the sales side, I have a philosophy of like, leave people better off than you found them inside the sales process itself. The sales process itself needs to be valuable. There must be value baked into it. And that regardless if they buy from you, they need to have a change happen. They need to leave that interaction going, wow, I mean, it might not be a good fit, but did I ever learn something new? And I'm going to do something. And it dovetails so nicely to the natural elements of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's a very natural question, because any sales professional today knows that it's only the kind of old school sales mindset that's that bullheaded, win at all costs, close at all costs mindset, whereas modern sales is sales as a service, and more cooperative and collaborative. And so this question of, wait, how does fighting relate to modern sales? And to understand, jiu-jitsu, literally translated, the word means gentle art. And it's based on a philosophy of not actually trying to hurt the other person, but trying to control the situation in a way that really leaves you both better with a better outcome. And to understand, we take a jiu-jitsu competition as an analogy for a sales engagement. And rather than think of competing against our prospect or competing against our clients, we recognize that if we have something of real value to offer them, if our products and our services can really help them, then anything that gets in the way of us being able to do so is not only our opponent, but their opponent. So we're not competing against or fighting against the prospect. We're fighting against the forces that get in the way of them saying yes to us being able to help them.
So the problem for us, maybe as I was thinking about it, is that we need to understand what jiu-jitsu is trying to do versus thinking of it as we might generally with other martial arts and the kung fu movies we've seen on TV.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu, the goal is to really control a situation, and the secret to jiu-jitsu, what allows it to be so effective and so powerful, is positioning. From a good position, things are easy. From a bad position, things are hard. And so you're trying to constantly position yourself so that, as we say on the mats, winning is inevitable and losing is impossible. So you're working, and again, it's not to the detriment of the prospect. It's to be able to overcome any forces that might prevent them from allowing you to help them.
Well, that's a fascinating perspective of it, Elliot. And I can see the combination and the alignment between sales and jiu-jitsu. And it sounds like you answered my question that I was thinking of as you were talking, is that what came first, sales or jiu-jitsu? I'm sorry.
It's easy for you to say, Scott.
It's not a normal word for me.
This is going to be a long interview if you can't pronounce jitsu.
Yeah, I know. So I'm guessing the sales came first, and I'm kind of curious. I love the metaphors between sales and something else. I like sales and flying. So I like, a good sales conversation is like coordinated flight. You're just maximizing your lift the entire time. I'm kind of curious your perspective of sales that you related to closely with jiu-jitsu. What was it that you really picked up? And I heard a little bit about working with a prospect against a problem. Is there anything else that you kind of use as a metaphor between the two?
Every single chapter of the book starts off with a jiu-jitsu frame. It's either a move or a situation, or Elliot sets up a scenario with a student. And that becomes the impetus or the jumping off point to teach a sales lesson. And many of the chapters are actually showing a specific technique in jiu-jitsu. And it's not that you have to know jiu-jitsu to get the value of the book. It's because of the analogy of something physical to teach something which is like a verbal jiu-jitsu. Sales has been said as in a lot of circles, it's verbal jiu-jitsu. And it's taking something that's physical and linking it to something that is intellectually, a conversation between two people. And in doing so, as we create something physical, if we had you on the mat, Scott, and we showed you the difference in an armbar to doing it the right way versus not doing it the right way, and how we make the analogy to closing a sale, you'd instantly get the physicalness of it. And when we link it in the physicality, it brings a different dimension to the teaching that has never, to my knowledge, been done in sales before.
What a great picture I had in my mind. Scott in an armbar on the mat with one of you guys.
Well, we can do it when we're up there. Yeah.
That might be, we'll talk about that in a minute, but you might have to wear your workout clothes to that meeting there, Scott.
That's okay with me. I've been wearing my workout clothes for about 18 months. I was at home. I'm happy to put on a pair of dress shoes, but my feet aren't. That's for sure.
But Scott, is that responsive to your question? It's a fascinating question you say ahead there.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, just the connection between the two is just fascinating, and I'm really glad you're on the show. So thanks for joining us. And the analogies and the metaphors together, I think, are just really add, I always think painting a picture in a person's mind really gives a greater clarification, and metaphors are a good tool on doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. And, as the book came together, we wrote the book really, the subtitle of the book is The Secret Black Belt System for Champion Leaders. It's a book that's designed for the leader to take their already well-performing team and take it to the next level with baked in systems that they can implement. But it's also for the individual sales rep to go, wow, if I just did this one element, that would up my game, in closing. And it's the premise of the book is that in most cases, you don't need more leads. You need to be converting your existing lead sources at a higher rate, therefore having a higher ROI on all the marketing and element activities that you're doing. And that's what I've seen with my team. This is all tested. Everything that we're doing is just help me create, and as a director of sales organization, to go from 2.5 million to well over 30. And it's tested. And some of those problems are things like, as a leader, your team isn't closing at the rates you want them to be. They're not handling objections as much as you wish them to be. They're not getting a consistent level of results. And for the individual reps, it's things like, the nitty gritty of like not being able to get a prospect to be engaged as much as you like, or handling objections that you keep getting to a wall, or deals keep falling through late in the process. And as we, brought the book together, it just became very clear that these are some major things when solved, when the systems implemented correctly, allow for a continual, perpetual increase in closing rates.
Fascinating.
Now, unfortunately, our audience, our listeners, don't have the book in their hand, although they could have the book in their hand, because we're doing a book giveaway that Elliot and Daniel have been nice enough to give us a number of books, so we're going to be giving those away. So go on winningatselling.com and just tell us you're interested in the book giveaway. And the nice thing too, guys, is we're going to be using this book for the next 8-10 weeks as our book club. So that's going to give you guys a lot more detail for that too. So anyway, I really liked the amount of detail you went into regarding pre-sales planning. I think that's really important. You call it pre-fight, and you even recommend practice sessions, which I think is really cool. But
yeah,
is it practical to take so much time before a meeting with a client to prepare? Are you finding that is getting good traction, or salespeople are resistant to that?
That's so interesting, Bill. In my sales team, we do 8 hours of training every week.
That's great.
8 hours. And how it breaks down is every single day we meet for 1 hour, every day. And the first 15 minutes are numbers. You got to know your numbers. You need to know what your relationship to those numbers are. And if you don't have a relationship as to like why they're good, like if they're good, you got to know why. If you don't know why they're good, then we got a problem. If they're not good, you need to have a good relationship to knowing why and what are the things you're going to do. So numbers are like the number one thing to start. But then for about 50 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on how long numbers took, then we review a sales call. And depending on what happens on that review, we may run into, we do some sparring sessions, which you mentioned, right? And we'll do those things. And then we have 2 1-hour segments per. I have setters and I have closers. So I do 2 hours separate in the week for setters and 2 hours separate for the closers, where we are doing in that time a deep dive into call review. Then separate to all of that, they each have an additional hour. So I guess that's actually 9 hours now that I think about it. An additional hour where they do sparring. And what sparring is all about is something, that is a concept that came out of something that Elliot brought in training. But what we do is they come together, because what I realized was pre-scripted objection handling doesn't work. It's a check mark against a box. Yep, I did it. But I do a call review and they wouldn't nail it. Right. And so what we created is sparring partners that in the same week, they are required to get together and log it and actually become for the other person, someone they could not overcome. And in that moment, sometimes they'll put on accents if the person was a little surly, whatever, and they'll become that person for their partner. And suddenly they see in their partner angles that they didn't come up with in the moment, and different ways of handling objections. And they log this, and everyone in the organization is required to spend time every week looking at those ahas. And I got to tell you, this is the secret to increasing the game. It's like you got to become a really good student of the game. You got to obsess over your closing rate, obsess over the words that you're saying, and have so many different angles against it that you can only get better. You only have the only option is to get better.
Switching topics a little bit and looking at some of your background and your experience and your interest in sales, I'm always curious. Every time we have a guest, a normal question that I ask is, what book or author or speaker has had the greatest impact on your sales career? Because sometimes we represent that when we write a book, is that voice comes through, or it comes through in our sales activities. I'm kind of curious, who's had the greatest impact on your sales career?
Yeah, the book that had the biggest impact on me was The Challenger Sale.
Okay.
Right, Matthew, I think it was Dixon, and I can't remember the gentleman's name.
Brent Aberson.
And yeah, exactly. And their follow-up one, the name I can't remember the name of it now. They had a follow-up book that was really good too. But that one, when I read that book, it completely changed the game for me in sales, 100%.
Yeah. What about you, Elliot?
Well, actually, prior to focusing on martial arts in the corporate world, I was in sales for a few startups, and Og Mandingo had a book, Best Salesman in the World, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm. Greatest Salesman in the World, yeah.
Greatest, thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was actually pretty significant and launched that career before I kind of moved on from that. But I think the emphasis on just diligence and hard work, and that applies obviously on the mats as much as in the boardroom.
Sure. Right. And you had to memorize the scrolls.
Yeah, 10 scrolls.
Right.
Yeah.
Memorize the 10 scrolls. So that's great.
Right.
All right, good. And that's why we have the book club. The Challenger Sales has been in our book club. That was probably, I think, was that the first one we did, Scott?
I think it was. Yeah. That was a year ago.
A year and a half ago. And it's a great book. And I can, Scott talks about the echo. I can hear that echo a little bit in your book. Now, your book is really original and I like your ideas in it. So I'm not trying to say it's any kind of a copy, but that ability to go out and challenge a client and not just take whatever they say at face value, but to give them value by challenging them, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it had a very profound effect on me. And after reading that book, my conversion rates as a sales rep, exponential, right? And that leaped me in my career to becoming my first directorship, and so it had a great level of DNA. It had some DNA, imprint on it for sure. Yeah.
Right. Now, in that client conversation, you call that the fight section, which is, to me, it's a little bit of a challenging nomenclature, but you talk about the importance of looking for openings and positioning. So tell us more about openings and positioning and how that sort of idea can help salespeople be more successful.
Yeah, Elliot, you want to talk a little bit about Set Up the Win?
So for those that don't have the book in front of them, just to step back and give some context, the book is based on a 4-part framework that I use on the mats with my athletes for prepping for, entering, winning, and learning from a jiu-jitsu competition. Then we apply that to sales engagement. So pre-fight is what we would do before an engagement to prepare for it. Fight is how we show up, how we connect with the prospect or client, how we see openings and position ourselves within them. Winning, how we move towards closing the deal and actually setting up future closes as well. And then post-fight, what we do after an engagement, win or lose. And so in this fight section, again, we talked about positioning being the secret to jiu-jitsu, that we're trying to get into such a good position that winning is inevitable and losing is impossible. And once we've gotten into a good position, our first job is just to keep it, just to maintain it. But once we have secured it, once we have established that, okay, we're not going to be slid back at all, then we want not to try to jump to the close. A common mistake is as soon as you're in a good position to try to jump to that checkmate, jump to that close, but rather we want to take small, secure steps forward. But you can only do this so much before you have to actually start thinking about ultimate victory. And so the idea is to position yourself so that when you get to that close in jiu-jitsu, just like, in chess, there's the checkmate. In sales, there's closing the deal. Jiu-jitsu has its equivalent, what we call a submission hold, something that would, in a fight, require someone to give up or risk being put to sleep or getting injured.
Right.
And so the idea is, if I go to a submission, I attack, as you said, Bill, I attack an armbar, and then think about all the different ways that my opponent or the person I'm competing with is going to try to stop me, it's a little too late. If before I even get there, if I can do things so that there is no chance of them getting out in advance of even trying to close the deal, in advance of trying to attack that armbar, I'm just in better position to actually secure it, actually, in our language, close the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that we translate this to the sales side is the idea of being in front of any objection, right? And one of those strategies, one of the sort of, in the book, we have 30 different elements, and one of those is in this domain. And so in order to be in front of all the objections and have more like a bulletproof way of handling objections, one of those strategies is getting their COI, or like what I call the cost of inaction statement. And so what most people do is either they ignore this cost of inaction, or they do a cardinal sin of stating the cost of inaction for the customer. And what you should be doing is making the customer state the cost of inaction themselves and draw it out. And what it is really about getting really clear on, if they do not solve the problem that you solve, what will be the cost? Oh, I'll have to, if we don't solve that problem, then we'll have to reduce our staff, or close a location, or fire people, or like whatever that is. What is that cost? And they have to state it. And it's very different than someone saying, well, I guess we're going to have to, reduce the staff, fire some people, versus, well, I guess if that happened, we'd have to fire the staff.
Right.
That's a really big difference. And knowing that you need to say it the way they said it and with the exact words for this to work. But later in the process, if they come up with an objection, you could bring this out and say, wait a second, I thought you said that if this doesn't get solved, you're going to have to, fire or reduce your staff.
Right.
And it changes the conversation. But you have to know to get this earlier on in the conversation, so that by the time that you may need it, as you're finishing, you have it to use. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And another thing I caught in your book was that you encourage your team to write down the objections, and you have a common knowledge area where people can go up and study on objections and answers for those objections. And so you're always grabbing that information, and each salesperson doesn't have to figure it out for themselves. And I think that's an important idea for any business, to have some kind of a common area where they can go and practice.
Yeah, the objections database. And what's brilliant about this, well, okay, I'm calling myself brilliant. That's probably a little arrogant, but anyways,
I'll agree with you.
The secret sauce of this is not only is it a level setter, so that all the idea of being an effective director of sales, in my opinion, is your ability to disseminate information effectively to the whole team, so everyone can use the learnings right away. And we've have a lot of these kind of databases that I've created as a level setting tool. But what's great about an objections database, it's fodder for your marketing department. They want to know what your clients' objections are, so they can get out in front of it in the marketing side. And it becomes hooks and ways to bring people in, and it actually generates more traffic. And that almost takes care of the lead sources, if that ever is an issue. But you're definitely able to, as a director, I can look in and resource my people much quicker because of the effectiveness of the different methods that I can disseminate the information quickly.
Excellent. Great. That is genius. I'll give you that.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. You talk a little bit about strategy in the book. I think that's poured towards the front of it. What are some, the most important strategies and action steps for our listeners that they can use to increase some of their conversion ratios or rates?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've touched on two of them, which is setting up, the first one we sort of talked about is sparring partners. And creating that as something like, when I created that, I saw a 10% increase in my sales team's conversion rates. Like, what's 10% to your listeners right now? What's 10% worth to you right now? right? To set that up. And one of the things that we have in the book, you get the free resources and stuff, the sparring training log, to actually log all those training moments. That's one that we did. The second is what we talked about is cost of inaction. So using that as a tool, and that I've seen tremendous gains in saving sales, especially late in a process, in order to increase conversion rates. The next one,
I think that would be really good to thwart the delayers.
Oh yeah,
right. I mean, there's so often I want to think about it. I need to talk to my team. Blah 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 blah, and they're all just delaying tactics. But if you've really associated a cost with doing nothing, it can take that delay off the table.
Oh yeah, you have to be very respectful when you love, like when you pull this card out. Mm-hmm. And that's why I talk about, what I mentioned in tonality. It's so important because it could backfire if you're not respectful with it.
Right.
And matter of fact with it. And again, it's about being sales as a service. You're serving them in that. So that was the second one. The next one that I think we could move into in that domain, and it brings us into the domain of winning and this concept of the reinforcement of the win. Mm. And Elliot, you want to set this up and then I can kind of bring it home.
Yeah. So when we think of, so for those that don't have any experience with jiu-jitsu, what is an armbar? It's a technique where we position ourselves so that we can hyperextend someone's arm. It's very safe, don't worry. But forces them to signal victory for us. And the idea is that there's an expression in Eastern philosophy. Most people fail in their endeavors because they're not as careful in the end as they are in the beginning. And the idea is that we've done so much hard work positioning ourselves to get into this place where we can close the deal. And then to try to rush through that final stage is a natural instinct, but something we have to work against. So instead, when you get into position, for example, on the mats, where you can catch a submission, rather than try to actually finish it, making micro adjustments at that final stage can be the difference between them slipping out and you actually being able to secure that victory. So little things like squeezing your knees, turning their thumb in a certain direction, rolling your body on a certain angle. These micro adjustments at that final stage are so vital because, again, we put in all this hard work. What a shame it would be to let victory slip through our fingers at that final stage.
And so in bringing this to the sales side, it's this idea that you're not going to jump to the close. You're going to do some things. You're going to do them every time as a system. And if you do them every time as a system and you're not, getting cocky with things, you prevent yourself from having a sale slip through. So one of those other strategies is what I call future casting. And it's painting the picture of the future once the problem is solved. So it's almost like the opposite of cost of inaction. It's actually the cost of taking action. And in our system, it's separate. These moments are separated by enough other elements that it doesn't feel like it's direct opposite. But it's almost like you're dreaming with the client of what's possible. And here, instead of teasing it out of them, you're co-creating that future with them as to what the problem will be, what will happen, and what's possible for the organization, possible for the individual once that future happens. Like it's been solved. Like what's going to happen? What's possible? How many more people could you hire? What would happen in your retirement? So I'll give you an example. One of our students, Craig, he runs like this financial advisory in Florida, really successful guy. And he came to us and he literally took this one element and he doubled down on it. And it literally was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for them. So he does these dinner seminars. And in the dinner seminars, he generates appointments. And then when the appointments come in, he then converts those appointments, right, from opportunities, right? And when he comes in, he wants to review their portfolios to see how he can do better for them, right? And in those meetings, he would constantly be focusing in on the numbers, just on the numbers. What are the returns? What's going to happen for you? But I said, Craig, you're not, the point of the numbers is to go have an incredible retirement. He's talking to already retirees and be able to do more things. I said, you're leaving the emotions on the table. You're not leveraging this element of an emotional picture. What can you do with the money? Did you want to buy a boat? Did you want to go travel? Like, he's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. because most couples, I mean, you guys probably know this, but most couples are a tactical buyer, married to an emotional buyer. And if you're not satiating the emotional side, you're leaving one of the two that you're trying to sell high and dry. You want to have them say yes. You bring the emotional element into this, and instantly when he leveraged this, it was incredible. And I've seen this time and again. And part of this is actually belief in your product or service actually getting the result for them. And I actually think one of the things that us as sales folks don't leverage enough is not only the tactical emotional positioning, but leveraging that pure belief that you will help them. That ultimate, like, just real belief, core belief in it.
Right. Yeah, and I think those tactical buyers have an emotional side to them that they don't want to admit.
I hear
you. When you go through that story, they might be feeling it even if they won't say it. So that's crazy.
Agreed.
Yeah,
but a lot of people sell like they buy, right, Bill?
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you're a tactical buyer, you're going to be selling like I see this all the time with my sales reps. If they are naturally a tactical person, it's all about the tactics. And then, yes, I agree that there's some emotional, but that's not their leading, like they're not their leader. And opposite, if they're an emotional buyer, they're only going to lead with emotions and leave the tactical person kind of high and dry. Yeah. So it's like when you teach this together, and you create systems that bake it in, like future casting, it becomes either a tactical or an emotional seller can leverage it to accomplish the opposite, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, listen, we're running out of time. I've loved this interview. Love your book. I've really enjoyed it. How can our listeners go deeper with the concept you're talking about, other than the fact that we're going to be doing this as a book club for 8 weeks, so they'll get a lot of that. But
yeah, they can. What we have for your listeners is they can grab. We have like a mini course that they can grab. It's completely complimentary. That takes some of these core elements that we talked about today and allows them to download some templates to help them implement. And all they need to go to is salesjujitsubook.com/faster. So that's Sales Jiu-Jitsu book. So JIUJITSU. People have a little hot problem with that. So
you
Sales
pronounce
Jiu-Jitsu
it better than Scott can.
book.com/faster, and they can grab that, and it's really designed to increase your conversion rates by 10 to 50% in the next 30 days. So that's our gift to all your listeners.
All right. Well, we have a resource page at winningatselling.com, and so we'll put that mini course link there, as well as Daniel's email if you want to contact him. We have a great announcement. If you enjoy Daniel and Elliot talking today, they are going to be coming to the Twin Cities on January 7th. They're going to be our keynote speakers for the Professional Selling Association's Accelerate 2022. That's a half-day sales workshop. And register, get more information at psamn.org. And Daniel, you said you were going to do some things at the workshop that you thought would be fun.
Yeah, we're going to do physical jiu-jitsu demonstrations as a way to really bring our complete concepts together. So, Elliot's going to be there. We'll be doing that demonstrations. We have books we want to give out, some limited supply there. We're going to give out some books to the first folks that are coming through.
All right.
We're going to have you do some workshop time with us and leave with an element built out. So you can, an element of one of our strategies built out and ready to go. So when you leave, you can go implement this with your teams or for yourself.
All right. Excellent. Daniel and Elliot, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks for joining us.
We really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by your host of the Winning at Selling podcast. Every professional athlete has a coach, someone to assist and advise. Tiger Woods had 4 swing coaches so that he could stay at the top of his game. What would you like to improve or overcome in the next year? Perhaps as a salesperson, you want to be more productive with your prospecting, overcoming objections, or delivering more effective presentations. As a sales manager, you want to create a spark within your sales team with a new message, a refreshed approach to starting new conversations with prospects, or you are looking for market-ready strategies to increase revenue and shorten the sales cycle with your existing team. Or as a business leader, you want to transform the sales culture and your value proposition for the new marketplace. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why your hosts of Winning at Selling podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Now you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. Go to winningatselling.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself, your people, and your customers, and invest in your future.
So we're closing out today, and Scott, you have a golden nugget for us.
I do. Half our life is spent trying to find something to do with the time we have rushed through life trying to save. And I think it's very applicable. I feel like I'm on the run right now and I'm trying to catch up, and I'm staying busy, but I just wonder what I'm passing up and staying busy. And I just wish that I don't have to make it up later.
Now, who said that?
Will Rogers.
Oh, that's the old Will Rogers quote. So half our life, you said half our life is spent trying to find something to do with the time we have rushed through life trying to save. So
exactly.
So quit rushing through, do things right, and I think you'll be happier, right?
Yeah. Be in the moment.
Be in the moment. That's a great way to say it. So for everything we've talked about today, all the links to Elliot and Daniel's program are going to be there. Daniel's email will be there if you want to contact him. Go to winningatselling.com.
Next week, we're going to cover chapter 1, the inner game of the book that we just talked about, Sales Jiu-Jitsu. And we're going to be giving away copies. So go to the website and enter the drawing for a copy of the book. And our topic is going to be 5 behaviors of achievement. So Bill and I are each going to put together 5 secret successes for achievement in salespeople. And I think you might be surprised at some of the things that we come up that are similar and some of the things that are different.
Go out and get better, one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.